Well, the only thing worse than doing work once is having to do work a second time. And that's what I have to do. So after that last video with us cranking, I got super excited and I realized I knew what to do next. I just got so excited I forgot. But the next thing to do is the fuel system, wiring up the fuel pump, and then theoretically we should be able to turn it on. But I was then going over with a couple guys talking about fuel system stuff, and I remembered that I forgot to use waterproof or watertight seals for the wiring in the fuel pump. So, oh my gosh, that means I have to take the whole entire tank off again. Yes. Not looking forward to that one bit. Unless I could drill my way through the trunk, which I really don't want to. I think we're gonna have to take the fuel pump off. So boys, it's about 4:45, or no, 4:50 right now. I'd love to be able to get this thing to start tonight, or at least have everything ready in position so that way if it gets too late I don't want to wake up anyone else who's here. So I'm gonna sit you guys down. Let's time lapse the heck of getting a fuel tank dropped out and the fuel filter crimped up the right way and back in. Let's go. Alright, so the fuel pump is in. Sorry I wasn't able to film at all. The camera died while I was rewiring the pump. But I think you guys saw me at least put one of the connectors on. I think I mentioned, but the problem before was I didn't have the waterproof connections, so that would have grounded out the fuel pump. And it's also good I checked because it turns out I actually wasn't even plugged in. So I have it all plugged in, have that secured so it'll stay plugged in. The connections are all waterproof, so there's not going to be any corrosion. And then put the tank all back in, topped it up with a little bit of fuel, so it should be at around a quarter tank. And then next up, we do have to tackle the wiring for the actual fuel pump itself. Alright, so I'm working on the wiring. It is the most fun I've ever had working on this car. This is a lot what it looks like. I've got all my papers and diagrams out, and yeah, just going through and I'm trying to figure it out how to do the wiring. So with the fuel pump, there is a way to bypass it and just make your own wiring. That's actually super simple and it'll get the fuel pump running just right. The thing is, what the Supra has and what most cars have, if not all, they have what's a system in place so that way if the car gets in an accident that the fuel system is automatically shuts off. So that way you're not like spewing fuel, the pump isn't pumping fuel to the front of the car. If you're like in a front end accident, the front catches on fire, it's not shooting fuel into that. So what I'm trying to do is just tap into the system. It's not super hard. The only problem is there's no like, hey, you cut this wire and put it into this. I mean, there is, but it's like saying you go to terminal, you go to the COR system and check all your wires on the relay number like 37, 81, and 64, and I'm like, I have no idea what that means. I need like go to this place and look for the green wire with blue stripe. Like, I do not understand diagrams well, so I'm struggling through this right now. So I'm trying to figure it out, and I saw this diagram online, and it uses things like black/orange and blue/yellow, and I really like that because colors. And so I'm gonna go through this, try to figure it out, and then we'll hopefully meet back out the car and have some progress for you. Alright, so after doing a bunch of reading, I still couldn't really figure it out, so what I decided that I'm going to do is I'm just going to do the way I know how to do a relay to get the fuel pump going. This won't have the safety off if a car gets in the accident, but we have plenty of time after we get the engine running. There's still a lot to do before I can actually get the car driving and everything, and also insurance is a bit high now, so it'll take a little bit to just get things sorted out, but I still have a bunch of the exhaust, I have to do brake lines, I have to clean up the body. I have a lot still to do. So what I'm going to do now is I know how to wire it up, so I'm going to show you guys how to do that and we'll get that process through. So I did make a stop by AutoZone, or O'Reilly's actually, O'Reilly's, because I had a gift card. Thank you to my girlfriend's mom so much for that. Helped out a lot. I went and I got a bunch of stuff that we need. I got an inline fuse holder, a couple extensions, so with the battery to cold cranking amps, I have an extra Mitsubishi Galant just sitting around, and I'm going to steal the battery off that because it has higher cold cranking amps, and since it's just sitting around doing nothing, I'm going to use that. So I'm going to extend the battery or the terminal's about 6 inches or something. Anyway, it's no big deal. I just need to reach it because the terminals are on opposite sides. I have a 30 amp relay. I have some terminals. I have some fuses for inline fuse, where I put that inline fuse here. And I have Twizzlers, which I didn't get there, but very necessary. Can't do the job without Twizzlers. Anyway, I have instructions on how to do it all, and I'm just gonna go ahead and walk you guys through the process as well of how to wire up a fuel pump. Alright, so first thing you're going to want to do is to lay out everything that you'll need or may possibly need, even if it's a bit excess. This is including, again, Twizzlers and cat food and water. You want those there, 100%, can't miss those. So going to the car, first thing we're going to do is we're going to be working in the trunk a lot, so make sure you have plenty of access room. I just push this up without using the clip just so it's as open as possible. Have this propped up because my struts are done. Cover already taken off because I was working with the gas tank and I haven't put it on. Also maybe because I lost the cover. No big deal. Anyway, we are going to get right down to work. Alright, once you have this all uncovered, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to unplug this yellow connection. For you guys with the Post 89 Mark III Supra, I believe it is gray on yours. So let's just get this unplugged. Alright, here's where things are going to start getting a little fun for you. So now what we're going to do is we're going to cut the small end of the connector off. But you want to leave a little space, so take back the protective sheeting it has right now. Alright, and you're going to want to cut it with about 1 inch left still on this connection part, because we're still going to be using this. We just need to be able to splice in here. So that's cut. Set that off to the side. Try to keep it close if you can, just somewhere where you know you're going to be able to get to it, because we will use it. Alright, up next what we're going to do is with this black and red wire right here, we're going to use a little butt connection, because for me it's a lot quicker than soldering. If you want to solder it and do it the right way, go ahead and do that. That'll actually probably be a lot better. But for lack of ability to solder and bad soldering gun, which sucks, I'm just going to go ahead and go with this. So we're going to cut off about 6 to 8 inches of wire right here. Now remember, I'm using about, what gauge is this? Alright, so it's recommended that you use 14 gauge wire. I believe this is 10 gauge, so we're on the safe side. If you don't know wiring, the smaller the number, the thicker the wire is. So we should be safe. You could always go with a thicker wire. You can't go with a thinner, so this thicker wire should work just fine. Anyway, cut yourself out off about 6 to 8 inches. Alright, and then what we're going to do is we're going to splice this up onto this connection. We want to put a butt connection here, and I believe it's called a spade end on the end here. I'll show you guys what it's like when we get to that step. Tip for stripping wires that I learned from a friend: when you have it in the stripper, haha, that's what she said. But when you have it in the stripper and you have it all clamped down, wiggle the wire in a circle, and then boom, the end pops off just like that. Alright, and we're going to want to do it for both ends. Alright, and those are off. Remember, you want to give yourself a little extra room to work with, but not so much that when you put the connection on, it's going to be, any wire is going to be exposed. Alright, next we're going to do the same thing for the black wire. Alright, and if it has wires with a bunch of like frayed ends like this, give them a little twist as soon as you get it off, so that way none are just being knocked off to the side. Alright, next up we're going to take our butt connection. We're going to slide it over one end here. Be careful with the wire if it has a bunch of prongs, because those will like to just splice out. And then stick the other end in. Make sure it's all in tight. Now, not all the copper wire is stuck all the way down. We have about half of it in, which is just fine, just as long as the other end is so covered. That's good. And then, so with 14 gauge, it's this blue setting, so go right to the middle. Start at the ends, crimp there, and then get another one in the middle for good measure. Alright, we're not going to heat shrink it yet because I like to wait till the end just to get it all done at once, and then also if I do mess up and something is wrong and I need to redo it, I can kind of snip in here and it's a lot easier to take it off. So we'll heat shrink it at the end, and now let's get a spade connection on the end. Alright, here's what this looks like. I don't know how well you can tell. It just has the circle like the normal butt connection. The end is just flat, so it'll plug into our relay. This goes on the end here. Again, we're using that blue setting. Oh, a nice good tug, and then you want to give it a small tug, not too hard, but enough to know that it's secure. So decent pull, and yep, those are both snug in there. On to the next step. So next up, we're doing the exact same thing that we just did here, but with this connection. So the relay is just going to make it so the signal has to go through the relay first. And so what we're doing is we're just taking another wire, same length, doing the same thing, connecting it to this side of the black and red wire, and then spade connection on the end. Alright, so then once we have this all set up, we're just going to plug this right back into where we took it out of. Alright, so the next thing up is we're going to get a relay. I have a 20 volt 30 amp relay. I just got it at AutoZone and it'll work just fine. And so what we're going to do next is we're going to need to plug these in. So there are specific pins where this goes. So one of these, pin number 87, where is it? Right up here. This is the top right corner. If this thing is on top, pin 87. That is going to be your positive. So we're going to have a wire that runs all the way from pin 87, which I believe is this one, and have it go pin 87, sorry, this one up here, there's numbers on the back too. Pin 87, we're going to have it run all the way to the front, to the battery, so there'll be a little bit of extensive wiring going on there, just routing it, but that'll work just fine. Pin number 30, which is this bottom one, will go to the fuel pump, and so that'll go to the fuel pump side of the wiring harness, which is this one right here, and then on this side, this other one is going to pin number 86, which is going to be the harness side of the plug. So again, I'll go through that. This is pump 30, or number 30, excuse me. It is the bottom one here. This is the one that's coming out of the wire. We have number 86, which is this one right here, the one that's coming from the harness. So the pump is this one, is the one that's actually connected to the plug. And then we have on 87 the battery that runs all the way to the front. This one white wire we don't actually need to do anything with, so we're just going to cap the end off with a little electrical tape, and that'll be good for those, so that way there's no shorting in between. And then the last pin on here is going to be a ground. We have some black wire, and we're just going to do a spade connection to a little ring, and we'll probably sand off a little area and just ground it right here. Our black wire is the same gauge as the red. Just going to cut it off about the same size as we did for the red ones. Snip that off. Up one end, up the other. And I have a bigger ground just so I could use one of the existing bolts that's around. If I could find it. Oh, there's the end there, all the way in. So I realized these aren't called spade connections. Spade connection is just 2 fork. These are called female connections. My bad for all those you who were yelling at me before. And then this end is going to be a female connection. Boom. Boom goes the dynamite. Now I'm going to go ahead and plug these into this relay now. We'll have everything but the power. So once again, the plug is going into this one from the plug side that goes into the fuel pump harness. The fuel pump is going into plug 86, just here on the left hand side. Plug number 85 is a ground. That's this one on the right. The fun part where we have to do the wiring for. So this is going to be where we are just going to, while the roll is still attached, we're going to take one end and then we're going to have to run it all the way through the cabin and do it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and get back to you, so that way you guys don't have to see me struggling through the cabin and getting it. But I will show you afterwards to show you how I ran it. I actually forgot one part that we needed to do before we did the power wire. Here we have an inline fuse. I just got a 20 amp fuse that'll work for it. And this is going to go run through the power wire. Now, some people will put it up in the front next to the fuse box that's already in there, but I'm going to put mine in the back just so that way it's right here with the whole fuel system, and if we're checking it, everything is just all consolidated in one area, so that way we don't have components spread out. So this is the same thing as a lot of these, just doing a female connection on one end, and then we're going to go ahead and butt connect this into the power wire and then run that to the front. Alright, we'll leave this end unplugged so that way we have a little more space to work with at the other end. Alright, let me just connect this here. You'll want to connect it before you run the power wire all the way up to the front, so that way you're not pulling wire to the front and then having this wire be dragged back without you knowing. So. Alright, so I have the wire all the way to here. I gave myself a bunch of extra slack just to make sure that when I tuck it, I'm not going to be pulling the wires at all. I'm going to be running it through the trim behind. You shouldn't even be able to see the wire until it pops out here. So this will all be fine. I'm going to go ahead and snip off the end here. Alright, that's cut. We have about 4 minutes to finish this up before I got to head out to work, so you may hear an alarm go off. But same thing as before, we're just snipping off the last little end so we can connect up a connection. Alright, that's off. Alright, I have these little O-ring connectors for the end that'll connect onto the battery terminal. Alright, and this wire is another power wire that we'll fix later. Not even worried about the fuel system, so if you see that, don't worry. And then we're going to screw this onto the end of the terminal here, so we're going to take this off and then put the other wire on. Alright, so then with this wire, we're just going to slip it over the nut here, or the bolt, excuse me, and get everything stacked back on. And if you'll notice, there is no battery in right now because obviously you're going to want the battery, if you have, or a battery out, so you don't zap yourself at all, or short circuit anything prematurely. So to either take your battery out or at least disconnect the negative terminal. I have my battery out because it already was, and also, as you can tell, it's a little more free working. I'm going to have to use the positive terminal anyway, so having it out just saves me a little bit of work there. Alright, so that's all on. I'll make sure you cover that back up. Alright, so now it becomes the moment of truth where we get to connect up our battery and then see if we can get this fuel pump going. Alright, now comes the moment of truth where we get to start the car. Hopefully make sure everything's clear of your cam gears. Big important note. Alright, so we cranked with no success. I really want to keep working on it, but I have to get going to work now, so I'm going to catch you guys here in a bit. It's good that we got that wired up. We still do need to test voltage though, so that's probably the issue of what's going on here. So I really want to keep working on this, but we got to go. So I will catch you guys later.